My wedding with Oliver was approaching, but unexpectedly, I received an invitation to the secret wedding he held with a married woman. When I arrived, they were locked in a passionate kiss. Seeing me, Oliver casually explained, Emma has never had a wedding ceremony. She's just experiencing it as a rehearsal. I smiled politely, then took the arm of his sworn enemy, Ethan, and said, then thank you for helping with the rehearsal. Now the wedding begins. Please leave the venue. When I received the wedding invitation, I was finalizing a plan in the president's office. Suddenly, a message from William, Oliver's childhood friend, popped up on the screen and was withdrawn just a few dozen seconds later. But it was long enough for me to see clearly. On the invitation link were the names of Oliver and Emma, and the time was the day before Oliver's wedding with me at the same location. So Oliver had taken a marriage leave a week earlier, claiming to be fully preparing for our wedding, but this was what he was actually up to. My heart tightened, and I felt as if my body had fallen into an ice cellar. I tried to clench my fists so hard that my nails dug deep into my palms, forcing myself to regain my senses. Ethan, the president across from me, was chattering non-stop about the plan, but I couldn't listen at all. After thinking, I interrupted him. Then, with a very serious tone, I asked, Senior Ethan, didn't you say that it doesn't matter who you marry, that it's all the same? Ethan stared at me and let out an hmm. Then would you marry me? Ethan stared at me again and replied with an hmm as promptly as when he rejected my plan. To be honest, I wanted to slap Oliver in the face, and Ethan was the perfect choice. They were the sons of the two largest shareholders in the company. One was the busy president, Ethan, and the other was the idle vice president, Oliver, and Ethan happened to be my senior from the same department in the same school. We had known each other for about 7 or 8 years. After learning about my plan, Ethan was willing and cooperative. He quickly took me to take wedding photos, and then on the day of Oliver and Emma's wedding ceremony, we flew straight to Haicheng. The wedding venue was on the most famous Sunshine Beach in Haicheng. From a distance, you could see the luxurious decorations and the huge wedding photos of Oliver and Emma on the big screen. In the middle of the stage filled with pink flowers, Oliver was passionately kissing Emma, holding the back of her head, amidst a chorus of jeers. When he saw me, his eyes widened in shock, but his lips still hadn't left his bride. His friends at the scene followed his gaze, and the lively atmosphere suddenly dropped to freezing point. A look of embarrassment flashed across Oliver's face as if he had been caught red-handed, but soon he regained his usual cynical smile. Emma has never had a wedding. She just wants to experience it. Consider it a rehearsal for tomorrow's process. Don't misunderstand. Oliver and I entered the company in the same year and interned abroad together for a year. He had chased me for a whole year and then been a model boyfriend for 3 years in front of me. But now, he could lie to me without even batting an eye. I smiled faintly and said, I've never heard that a wedding rehearsal requires a stand-in. Poor Sister Emma, her lips are all swollen from the kisses. Seeing that I was being aggressive, Oliver didn't bother to pretend anymore. He showed a hint of impatience and said, Ava, be sensible. Emma is in poor health and she's here helping us prepare for the wedding. It's just a joke. You'll still be the bride tomorrow, right? What a good excuse of being in poor health. Oliver and Emma had always been close, but I had never suspected anything because he said that Emma had saved his life. Oliver was a rich second generation. After the internship, he took the position of vice president, nominally in charge of several departments. Emma was a subordinate in the department he directly managed. He introduced Emma to me a long time ago and said that from then on, Emma would be his own sister. The reason was that when they were on a business trip together, Emma pulled him to save him from being hit by a car. As a result, she miscarried her 2-month-old baby and her health had been poor ever since. I had believed this story wholeheartedly before, but now I didn't believe a single word. I coldly watched my fiancé of 3 years holding another woman in a wedding dress and said in a calm tone, "Sorry, I heard today is an auspicious day. I plan to get married right now." Hearing this, Oliver burst out laughing. "Are you in such a hurry, Ava? I said I would marry you, and I definitely will." He couldn't laugh anymore halfway through his sentence because he clearly saw Ethan appear beside me and affectionately take my hand. "Now the rehearsal is over. Unrelated people, please leave the venue." Ethan had been decisive and powerful in the business world in the past 2 years, and his imposing manner made people around him unconsciously step back. Oliver's face also changed. He didn't dare to provoke Ethan. He bypassed him and questioned me, "Ava, what do you mean?" I rolled my eyes, too lazy to explain. With a wave of my hand, the manager of the wedding venue trotted from behind to Oliver. "Oliver, I'm sorry. Ethan has booked today's venue at 10 times the price. What do you think?" The manager made a gesture of invitation, and Oliver, feeling humiliated, said angrily, "Fine, Ava. You made a big deal out of this. Let's see how you can still enter my Oliver family store." Oliver dared to say this because he was sure that with my ordinary family background, I wouldn't be willing to give up the chance to marry into a wealthy family. Indeed, marrying into the Oliver family would give me a better life, a higher platform, and more resources. But he forgot that I had reached my current position through my own efforts. He also forgot that I was going to marry him because I thought we were truly in love. However, as Oliver had predicted, things did get out of hand. The invitations sent out by the Oliver family couldn't be withdrawn in time. The guests invited the next day baked in the sun on the beach for a whole noon, but they didn't wait for Oliver's bride. But Ethan posted a photo of our marriage certificate on his WeChat Moments. Congratulations to Ethan. The iron tree has finally blossomed. Am I seeing things? Isn't this Oliver's fiancé? I saw the invitation. Oliver's invitations come in 2 versions. I heard that little Oliver held a wedding with his mistress the day before his wedding, and the bride-to-be fought back bravely. Oliver didn't expect that I had really married Ethan. He called me all morning, but Ethan hung up every call. Finally, I heard that he wanted Emma to be the bride again. But Emma was a married woman. She could play around with him in their small circle, but how could she really marry him? So the wedding of the young master of the Oliver family had now become a joke. Ethan and I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau with our red marriage certificates, feeling a bit dazed. In just a few days, I still got married, but my husband had changed. My original plan was just to have Ethan accompany me to the wedding, but Ethan, with a half smile, said that I had to give him a legitimate status. I don't do anything illegal. I didn't know how to respond to his reason. But while I was hesitating, he gave another explanation. Grandma's not feeling well recently. She wants to see me get married. So after getting the certificate, I followed Ethan to his grandma's house. But his grandma seemed to be in good health. She stubbornly blocked the courtyard gate, waiting for Ethan to show the marriage certificate before she was relieved to let us in. However, she was old and her eyesight was not good. She held my hand and called me Sophia over and over again. At first, I didn't recall who Sophia was until I saw the group photos of Ethan's family and Sophia's family in the living room. Ethan used to be the regular male lead in the school's film club, and the female lead who co-starred with him was Senior Sophia. Later, Senior Sophia went abroad, the female lead was replaced, and Ethan quit the film club. At that time, everyone was spreading the word that Sophia had married far away for the interests of her family. But her marriage was not happy, and Ethan, her childhood sweetheart, had since withdrawn from the world of love. I didn't know whether the rumors were true or false, but at that time, the whole Haicheng University was shipping the 2 of them as a CP. Grandma, this isn't Sophia. Ethan took out the marriage certificate and pointed at the words, reading them out one by one for Grandma. This is Ava. Look, Ava, your granddaughter-in-law. Oh, it's Ava. Grandma is getting senile. Good child, come here quickly. Grandma smiled gratifyingly and took out a jade bracelet to put on my hand. Following Ethan's signal, I accepted it, thinking that this task was almost done. But I didn't expect that after dinner, Grandma would ask us to stay overnight in the mansion. Ethan's family is wealthy, and there are many rooms in the mansion. However, since Ethan and I already had the marriage certificate, we naturally had to stay in the same room. Ethan stayed in the bathroom for a long time, so long that I, who was originally anxious, had dozed off on the sofa. Suddenly, my phone rang. I picked it up casually, and Oliver was, on the other end, raging impotently. He sounded drunk. Ava, you actually married Ethan. Don't you know the relationship between my family and Ethan's family? You're deliberately embarrassing me, right? I had never seen Oliver like this. Clearly, in the past 3 years, he had been gentle and considerate to me, always responsive to my requests. It turned out that it was all just a facade. I woke up completely and almost spat. What? Emma doesn't want to marry you, so you're coming to play the pot calling the kettle black. I've been with you for 3 years, and you've been cheating for 3 years. Now you still have the nerve to question me. Last night, an anonymous account recommended Emma's Weibo small account to me. Their despicable deeds were simply too numerous to mention. I was just joking with her. We didn't really get a marriage certificate. Do you really need to humiliate my Oliver family like this? What do you mean by joking? Wasn't she the one in the wedding photos? Isn't she the one you take on business trips every time? Or is that underwear in your suitcase not hers? Even if that's the case, you shouldn't use Ethan to anger me. Can a man be the same as a woman? You're really unreasonable. Honey, get me a towel. Ethan timely appeared next to me, deliberately coquettishly saying this, then took my phone and hung up directly in the midst of Oliver's cursing. Ethan was very close to me. The water droplets from his undried hair dripped onto my shoulder, feeling cool. He turned my face with both hands, gently wiped away the tears that I couldn't hold back for a long time, clicked his tongue, and walked silently to the window. I was a bit embarrassed because of my gaffe, but then I saw him standing with his hands on his hips, saying unhurriedly, the wind is rising. It's time for the Oliver family to go bankrupt. I was amused by Ethan's cheesy words and burst out laughing, forgetting that Ethan always did what he said. After returning to the company, Emma had become Oliver's personal secretary, the vice president. It seemed that the fact that Emma didn't show up at the wedding didn't cause any rift between them. Instead, they took every opportunity to disgust me. One day, I was about to decorate the meeting room. When I pushed the door open, I saw the two of them being very intimate inside. Seeing me come in, Emma pushed Oliver and sat on the meeting table, crossing her legs. Ava, it's not that I, as your sister, am lecturing you. Don't be so ignorant. It's normal for rich boys to play around. Even if you marry Ethan, you should be more generous in the future. I rolled my eyes. An important client is coming today. You two, find another place. Seeing that I didn't take the bait, Oliver squinted his eyes, turned around, and started getting handsy with Emma again. What do you have to talk to that blockhead about? Oliver, today's client was hardly pulled in by Ethan. The company is in the growth stage. You'd better be more sensible. I imitated Emma's affected way of speaking. The Oliver family was considered a wealthy family, but in fact, apart from this company jointly invested with Ethan's family, the other two companies in the hands of his eldest brother were already in jeopardy. If he sabotaged Ethan's cooperation, he was actually losing his own fortune. Originally, when I was with Oliver, the Oliver family looked down on me. Later, seeing that I was doing well in the company, they relented and agreed, thinking that I could assist Oliver in his career. In the past, I didn't care about these things, thinking that as long as we loved each other, everything else didn't matter. Oliver didn't take my reminder seriously, as if he thought his little tricks could embarrass me. So half a minute later, when Ethan brought James, the president of James Group, to the door of the meeting room, Oliver was still playing with the strap of Emma's dress that had slipped off her fragrant shoulder. And the latter, leaning on Oliver, her eyes that were originally full of charm turned into shock and guilt the moment she saw James. "Emma, come here." James was obviously a bit surprised, and his face showed visible displeasure. Emma immediately obediently stood up, tidied her clothes, and walked behind him. "Honey, why are you back in the country?" Most of James Group's businesses were abroad, and James seldom returned to China. I suddenly remembered the rumor that James had a little wife who had never been seen. Could it be Emma? "Ethan, aren't you going to introduce?" James stared at Oliver, who was still leaning against the meeting table with an embarrassed face, his eyes as cold as if he wanted to kill. "James, this is Oliver, the vice president of our company." "Oliver, this is James from James Group. Come and say hello. This Oliver here seems to be very familiar with my wife. I think we can leave this cooperation to him." Oliver had naturally heard of the fame of James Group. He looked at Emma, then looked at me with pleading eyes. "James has a good eye. Our little Oliver is young and promising. This cooperation will surely satisfy you." I received Ethan's look and praised Oliver hypocritically, then stuffed the cooperation materials into Oliver's hands. I said in a voice that only he could hear, "Little Oliver has the favor of Mrs. James. You must seize this opportunity well." After this incident, James Group launched an all-round suppression of the Oliver family's business. Before long, the other two companies of the Oliver family declared bankruptcy, and the shares of this company also had to be sold to Ethan's family at a low price. What a coincidence. Emma happened to be James' wife. Ethan and I were sipping drinks on the rocking chair on the balcony. While feeling delighted in my heart, I also felt sorry for our cooperation with the James family. There aren't that many coincidences. It's just self-inflicted. Ethan smiled, different from his usual self-assurance, with a hint of cunning. I remembered what he had said about the Oliver family going bankrupt. Only then did I realize that this was a game set up by Ethan, and a sense of gratitude suddenly welled up in my heart. Although Ethan's family would eventually annex the Oliver family, he could have taken his time. However, by doing it this way, he was causing significant harm to himself while dealing a blow to the enemy. Since I was a child, my parents had a discordant relationship and they favored sons over daughters. I could barely feel any love from them. So I always liked to wrap myself up and keep people at a distance. Oliver used to be nice to me, but now I realize that it was probably just because he had never met someone who was indifferent to him and he was determined to have me at all costs. Now Ethan's open support is something I've never experienced before. It's like an ant crawling on my heart, nibbling at the softest part bit by bit. But what does Ethan think? Ethan and I live together, but in separate rooms. Our relationship hasn't crossed the boundaries beyond that of friends and colleagues. Yet it's also different from our previous teacher-friend relationship. It's the moment when we blush involuntarily when we meet each other after taking a bath, or when he wanders around the kitchen wearing an orange apron, scolding me for not eating properly. It's the gentle intoxication of sipping drinks in the evening breeze with cicadas chirping on a summer night, or the hesitant hands when we watch a horror movie together and want to get closer. In my eyes, the former Ethan was the senior who urged me to hand in my homework, the leader who pushed for the plan, and also the high and mighty chosen one. But now he seems to be very close to me. After Ethan used James' hand to deal with the Oliver family, Emma never showed up again. Instead, Oliver was like a persistent pest. He blocked me downstairs of the company several times, saying he wanted to talk to me. Fortunately, as if Ethan had expected it, He always showed up in time and took me away openly, leaving Oliver fuming with rage, like a cat with its tail on fire. But I forgot that one of Oliver's few advantages was his persistence. Just like when he persevered in chasing me back then, now he's haunting me. That day, Ethan had a business drinking party, and I went home early alone. When the rapid knocking on the door came, I had just taken a bath and was only wearing a bathrobe. Miss Ava, there's a courier. Please sign for it. Just leave it at the door. I was wiping my dripping hair and was too lazy to move, leaning on the sofa. Sorry, it's a valuable item and requires the recipient's signature in person. The moment I opened the door, I saw Oliver using both hands and feet to yank the door open and block the entrance. I was shocked. When I saw the courier with my name and address falling out of his arms, I was instantly furious. Oliver, do you still have any sense of shame? You're stooping to such underhanded tricks. Ava, don't be afraid. I couldn't find you, so I had no choice. Ava, I was wrong before. I promise I'll change. I only have you now. Please don't leave me, okay? I stared coldly at him until he finished, then retorted, once unfaithful, always unfaithful. Besides, you've never been sincere to me from the beginning. What, did Emma dump you, so you come here to pretend to be affectionate? Do you think I'm still stupid enough to be deceived by you? I didn't want to waste any more words with him and reached out to push him out of the door, but he held onto the doorframe firmly and didn't budge. Ava, wasn't I good to you? I chased you for so long. You just committed the mistake that all men in the world would make, right? You just couldn't control yourself when seduced by Emma, right? Yes, Ava. She seduced me. She tricked me. I didn't want to betray you. Oliver, you really disgrace all men. Have you been cheating for just a day or two? For a full 3 years, you've been fooling around with Emma. Are you still going to tell me this is just a momentary mistake? Ava, please don't be so heartless. Have you forgotten how good we were before? Remember when you were trapped on the mountain by heavy rain during the internship? I climbed the mountain path for hours to find you. That was the first time you smiled at me so happily. Don't you remember? The more Oliver mentioned the past, the more disgusted I felt. Do you think I don't know? When you were chasing me, you hadn't broken up with your ex-girlfriend yet, right? She lost her child and lay in the hospital for over half a month because of you, while you were blatantly looking for a new love. I'm really ashamed of my crush on you back then. I scrolled through Emma's Weibo secondary account from top to bottom and found quite a lot. The one who had a miscarriage to save Oliver was actually another girl. Now, please leave my house immediately, or I'll call the police. Oliver's fist, which was leaning against the doorframe, clenched and then relaxed and then clenched again. Finally, when he saw me taking out my phone to make a call, he lunged straight at me. I was pushed to the ground by him, sliding more than a meter with my back hitting the floor. I cried out in pain, and the bathrobe on my body was rubbed loose and in a mess. Oliver was pressing on me, his eyes full of anger and unwillingness. His hot breath hit my neck, making me feel nauseous. I was pinned down and couldn't move. There was a fishy sweet taste in my throat, and I could only make a weak sound through gritted teeth. Oliver, get off. But Oliver ignored me and brought his cigarette-scented mouth close to my earlobe. Ava, you can only be mine, only mine. Before he could finish, Oliver was suddenly pulled up by someone who burst in and then received a heavy punch that almost sent him straight back to the ground. When I saw that it was Ethan, I finally let out a sigh of relief. I really didn't expect Oliver to become so extreme. Fortunately, after being blocked by him last time, Ethan set up an emergency contact in my phone. The moment Oliver appeared, I triggered the emergency call. Ethan didn't have time to take revenge for me. He quickly helped me up and took off his coat to wrap around me. I was gasping for breath, and he gently patted my back, his eyes full of heartache. Following his red-rimmed eyes, I noticed that less than 2 centimeters away from where I had fallen, there was a delicate Swiss Army knife stuck. It was a small gift I brought for Oliver when I was on a business trip. Now it had almost become a deadly weapon that could have killed me. Oliver was taken away by the police Ethan brought. As he was leaving, he was still swearing. Ava, no wonder you're so unyielding now. You've been having an affair with Ethan for a long time, right? You two are in cahoots, plotting to bankrupt my Oliver family, right? As his voice faded away, the mist in my eyes finally turned into big drops of tears, falling onto Ethan's coat. Ethan picked me up in his arms, carried me to the bed in the bedroom, and then fetched a first aid kit to treat my wounds. For the whole night, he didn't say a word. He just watched me cry, then wiped away my tears. When I cried again, he wiped them away again, and through my tear-blurred eyes, I clearly saw his hands trembling slightly. Ethan quickly moved me to his large flat in the city center and even wanted to hire a bodyguard for me, although Oliver was still in administrative detention at the police station. I'm sorry, Ava. I failed to protect you. I clearly thought he might. Every time Ethan changed the dressing for the wound on my back, he would blame himself. It's okay, Senior. Fortunately, you arrived in time. I unconsciously reached out to smooth his tousled bangs. These days, he has become a bit slovenly. I was forced by him to rest at home for a week. Then, when he had to go on a business trip, he insisted on taking me with him. Don't be like this. I'm almost like a canary, I complained as I watched him packing. Oliver is only detained for 15 days. How can I be at ease leaving you here alone? Ethan glared at me and took me to Haicheng without further ado. Although both Ethan and I studied in Haicheng for 7 years, I have to say that Haicheng is still a charming place. Just lying on the beach makes one feel extremely comfortable. As the sun was setting, a lyrical piece of music started playing in the nearby beach restaurant. This song is not bad. Ethan came out to find me after finishing his work. It's called Serenade. I even sang it at the freshman's party. But there was a little accident at that time. What kind of accident? Ethan asked. A classmate I didn't get along with changed my accompaniment tape, leaving me awkward on stage for a long time. Fortunately, a boy came to the rescue and accompanied me on the piano. That's quite romantic. Unfortunately, as soon as I got off the stage, I went to argue with the classmate who changed my tape. Come to think of it, I didn't even thank that boy, and I didn't even see clearly who he was. So how would you thank him? Ethan smiled ambiguously. How else? Am I supposed to kiss him and then promise to marry him? I was joking and didn't notice Ethan's expectant eyes at all. Unexpectedly, the next day, in the banquet hall of the cruise ship on the sea, Ethan sat by the white piano and played this serenade in its entirety. Under the dim yellow lights of the cruise ship, Ethan bowed and walked slowly towards me. His figure gradually overlapped with that boy I didn't see clearly 7 years ago. So it was you. Under the influence of alcohol, I stood on tiptoe and kissed him, then blushed quickly. Ethan touched my head and said softly, as for the other thank you gift, you can owe it for now. Before leaving Haicheng, we visited our alma mater. Remember this place? Standing on the grass in front of the library, Ethan asked in a tone full of stories. Remember? The film club helped the school shoot a promotional video, and the last scene was shot here. Ethan handed me his phone and scrolled to a group photo. It was a group photo of the entire film club taken here after the rap. In the photo, Ethan was full of youthful spirit. His usually serious mouth curved into a nice arc. Beside him, Senior Sophia was holding a bunch of sunflowers and smiling brightly. I felt a pang of jealousy in my heart and had to change the subject, asking him to buy me a coconut. His figure was stretched long in the sunset. The sea breeze ruffled his hair. For a moment, It was as if I had returned 8 years ago, sitting on a small bench in the corner, peeking at the male lead of the story unscrupulously through the small window of the camera monitor. Suddenly, Ethan's phone vibrated. It was a message from Senior Sophia. Ethan, I'm divorced. I'm coming back to the country on the 3rd. Remember to pick me up at the airport. My heart suddenly felt like it was pricked by a slender needle. So the rumors in college were true. So was Ethan showing me that photo just now to hint that I should make way for his first love. What was yesterday's piano piece then? And what was that kiss? After returning to Jin City, I suffered from insomnia for several days. After much consideration, I drew up a divorce agreement. It would be better to end this before it really began. I got home earlier than Ethan, packed my things, and just waited for him to come back to put an end to our marriage. While waiting for him, I received a call. It took me a while to recognize that the caller was Oliver's good friend. Sister-in-law, Ava, Oliver has committed suicide. Come and take a look. I was speechless. Oliver had almost hurt me with a knife a few days ago, and now he was playing the trick of feigning injury. I sighed helplessly and asked, "This is the only number you have, right?" "Oh, yes." The other person was obviously taken aback. He seemed to want to ask something, but I hung up the phone and blocked the number directly. 2 minutes later, another call came. This time, it was actually Emma. "Oliver has committed suicide. Aren't you going to take a look?" Emma lowered her voice, obviously as if she didn't want to be heard. "Shouldn't I be the one asking you this? Oliver has committed suicide. Why don't you, who is so considerate, go and take a look?" I said sarcastically. "Ava, aren't you really afraid that something might happen to him? Emma, you should recycle and deal with certain trash yourself. Don't try to dump it on me." With that, I hung up the phone decisively. I don't know how deep Emma's feelings for Oliver were during these 3 years when she wasn't by James' side. But these things have nothing to do with me anymore. The door suddenly opened. It was Ethan. He was holding a bunch of sunflowers in his hand, but his face didn't look good. "What are you packing your luggage for?" "Going to see Oliver." Ethan must have heard me talking outside the door, but not the whole conversation. "After what he did to you, you still want to go back to him?" Ethan's tone was harsh, and he liked to use rhetorical questions. Suddenly, a feeling of grievance welled up in me, and the words I wanted to explain were held back. "Then what are you buying flowers for?" "To pick up Sophia at the airport." Today was the day Sophia was coming back to the country, but Ethan hadn't mentioned it at all. Ethan was stunned. I don't know if it was because he felt guilty when Sophia was mentioned or if he realized his tone was not good just now. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I forgot to tell you about Sophia's matter. No need to say anymore." I lost my temper, picked up the suitcase, threw the divorce agreement on the table, and said in a distant tone, "Senior, thank you for helping me so much." I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "I won't be a stumbling block between you two." I went to my best friend Luna's place and moped around all day, not washing my face or going to work. This feeling was different from when I found out Oliver was cheating. I could get angry openly and fight back vigorously then. But now I don't even have the right to be sad. I unconsciously scrolled through Sophia's updates yet was afraid of seeing Ethan's figure in the photos she posted. Ethan didn't look for me these days. Occasionally I received messages forwarded by colleagues which were all work-related. After a week of depression, I finally pulled myself together and decided to go to the company to deal with some work matters. And by the way, submit my resignation. In fact, Ethan and I had talked about it before. I had saved some money and wanted to open my own studio, and he was very supportive of it. But now, because of what happened between Ethan and me, we can no longer get along as a superior and a subordinate. Ethan had gone to a meeting, and the office was empty. I waited for him in the room. Getting bored sitting there, I stood up and walked around. When I passed by the printer, I unexpectedly saw the divorce agreement I gave him in the waste paper basket next to it. But what caught my eye even more was a document beside the waste paper basket, on which was written "Plan to woo my wife." Driven by curiosity, I picked up the plan, but I didn't have the courage to open it. While I was hesitating, Ethan came back. He didn't expect me to be there and looked a bit surprised. When he saw what was in my hand, a flash of panic crossed his eyes. "Have you opened it and read it?" He walked to the desk and started nervously tidying up the documents on it. "Sorry, I didn't open it. I was just curious for a moment and wanted to know how you were going to pursue Sophia." "Sophia?" He turned to look at me, looking incredulous. "You thought I was going to pursue Sophia, wasn't it? She's divorced, coming back to the country. It would be logical for you two to be together, right?" Ethan stared at me for a long time, then suddenly laughed. "So you were angry that day because of this? If it's so logical, why would I write a plan?" He came over and opened a corner of the document in my hand. "Why don't you take a look and see who the leading lady I've been planning for a long time actually is?" I looked down hesitantly, and a group photo came into view. It was the same photo he showed me by the seaside that day. But the photo of more than 10 people was cropped into a photo of 2 people, him and me. Then I remembered that in that group photo, because I was short, I was also standing in the front row near the center. Originally, Senior Sophia was standing next to me, but Ethan suddenly swapped positions with her just before the photo was taken. Could it be that the person Ethan liked wasn't Senior Sophia, but me? I looked up at him, trying to suppress my pounding heart, and continued to flip through the plan. Step 1. Let Ava know Oliver's true face. There was a handwritten note next to it. I originally thought that as long as Ava was happy, it would be fine for me to watch over her from afar. But Oliver had already cheated and even held a wedding with someone else before his wedding with Ava. How dare he bully Ava like this? The Oliver family really can't be left alone. So it was he who arranged for me to receive the invitation sent by William. Step 2. Appear in time and be Ava's support. There was also a note next to it. I didn't expect Ava to ask me to accompany her to the wedding. We got married unexpectedly. Ava looks so beautiful. It's a pity that we didn't have time to invite relatives and friends to witness it. I will definitely make up a perfect wedding for her in the future. Step 3. Bring up Grandma and ask Ava for help to get the marriage certificate successfully. Note: completed. But how exactly does one fall in love after getting married? Step 4. Find an opportunity to pretend to be drunk and confess to Ava. So according to the plan, it was time to carry out the last step. There were many other notes on the plan, which carefully recorded Ethan's heart-fluttering moments for me, his protection of me, and his determination to take me back after discovering Oliver's infidelity. It turned out that he had liked me for a long time. Even the campus recruitment of the company at Haichen University when I graduated was specially arranged by him. He was originally going to reveal his feelings to me when I came back from my internship, but he didn't expect that when he saw me again, I was holding the hand of Oliver, the youngest son of his rival. "Then why didn't you come to find me these days?" The sadness I had accumulated for several days made me feel extremely wronged. I heard at the door that Oliver had committed suicide that day and thought you had really gone to him. Ethan's voice was hoarse, and I then noticed the dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept for several days. How could that be? If he committed suicide, me calling 120 would be the most merciful thing I could do. Ethan was amused by me. I was just flustered and misunderstood. After all, he had been by your side for several years. I was really afraid you couldn't let go. He took my hand and patiently explained his relationship with Sophia. It turned out that although they were childhood sweethearts, they grew up with a third person. Sophia and another boy liked each other and got married. The so-called divorce and coming back to the country was just a quarrel. Her husband chased after her as soon as she got off the plane. There was no need for me to pick her up at the airport. When I went home that day, I originally wanted to introduce you to them, but it backfired. I looked up at him, still a little nervous about the sudden confession. But didn't you say before that it doesn't matter who you marry, that it's all the same? Ethan pretended to be angry and gently tapped my head. Don't you want to think about what you said before I said that? I tried to recall, and coincidentally, I seemed to have said that I wanted him to come to my wedding. I felt a pang of heartache for no reason. I could no longer pretend. I stepped closer, held his face, and kissed him deeply. Ethan, I'm sorry. It's been hard waiting for me for so long. Ethan kissed me back passionately. Fortunately, I waited until you. It's never too late.